morning, everyone. Good morning, friends, and community leaders and lovers of land and open space. We are so happy you're here today. This is our 12th annual Conservation Breakfast. We sold out. There's 221 of us here today. We made tables of 10 be tables of 11. That is just so exciting. My name is Colleen Logan, and I'm the board president here at Summit Land. Thanks for being here. First, we have some thank yous. Thank you to Deer Valley. I know Susie's here. I'm not sure where the rest of the Deer Valley folks are, but thank you for this beautiful venue and the delicious breakfast. Thank you to Wasatch AV for the audiovisual support. And thank you to the incredibly hardworking staff at Summit Land Conservancy who put on this event and other events and do great things all year round. This year we celebrate 23 years. Back in 2002, when we first started, when we put our very first conservation easement on more than 800 acres, actually right here at Deer Valley, the world had just been introduced to the absolute glory of Park City and Summit County during the Olympics. Naturally, what followed were plans and proposals for millions of square feet of commercial and residential development, just more than you can imagine. And that concerned a group of citizens, including our own CEO, Cheryl Fox, who's been there from the beginning, and thus Summit Land Conservancy was born. Since then, Cheryl and her team has saved more than 19,000 acres of local land, open space, farms, and ranches. Today, we've elevated what we mean when we say Summit in Summit County. Because here in Summit County, we have the beautiful Uinta Mountains, and those are the headwaters for the three most important rivers that we have here in northern Utah, the Bear, the Provo, and the Weber. Those rivers flow through the big landscape scale farms and ranches that we're working to conserve today. You know, here in Utah, we enjoy beautiful bluebird days, clear skies, incredible snow. Even in May, we enjoy incredible snow. And all that is based on a healthy Great Salt Lake. Water and land go hand in hand. Which brings me to our distinguished speaker this morning. We are so honored to have Mr. Brian Steed, who was just named the first ever Great Salt Lake Commissioner by Governor Cox. Welcome, Brian Steed.
Thanks, Colleen, and thanks, Cheryl, for having me here today. Again, my name is Brian Steed, and truly happy to be here. Let's talk Great Salt Lake. Can we do that? We are all currently sitting in Great Salt Lake's watershed. This is more of the headwaters of the Great Salt Lake, and water flows from the Uinta Mountains in 3 different directions, all ending in the same spot, which is Great Salt Lake. Before it gets there, it passes through a lot of economic activity, including farms and ranches and municipal and industrial centers, and then it gets to Great Salt Lake, and that's where we are. So let's talk about how we're doing. Well, it's a dynamic system. Great Salt Lake is a terminal lake, which means that water doesn't leave that system. The only way out of the system is through evaporation. So the more water that comes in, the higher the lake goes. The less water that comes in, the lower the lake goes. And there are natural conditions that drive ups and downs on the lake. So that's something that we got to be aware of. But as we look over the last, really since the 1980s, and this starts in the high points of the 1980s and ends in the low point in 2022, most of us in this room, interestingly enough, have experienced both the highs and the lows of Great Salt Lake. If you were living in the mid-1980s, then you experienced the high points of recorded history. And the low points happened in 2022 when it got down to a scary low level. 2 things happen is when the lake gets lower. One, the lake gets more salty as it gets lower. And in fact, You can see on this graph as it spins, you can see there's actually two different colors of lake. There's a northern arm and a southern arm. The northern arm is so salty, in fact, that it's already lost almost all biological integrity. No brine shrimp, no brine flies, really no birds. They'll stop over to rest, but they won't eat anything there. Sometimes they nest in Gunnison Island, but by and large, that has already been ecologically stopped. On the south arm, however, it's still that vibrant color, and that's the ecological integrity we're trying to save on Great Salt Lake. And as that lower levels happen, we saw salinity spike, we saw lower levels of brine shrimp, and almost no brine flies. That's significant in a couple of ways. Second thing we saw, as you see the lake shrink, you also see more exposed playa, and that has its own set of concerns, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So before we get there, though, let's talk about, I'm going to go back even. Let's talk about why you might care about Great Salt Lake, even if you don't really care about Great Salt Lake. All of us in this room have actually eaten Great Salt Lake. I'm betting it. Which, and you don't actually have to go out and explore the brine flies, because if you've been recreating on Great Salt Lake, you probably have also eaten some of Great Salt Lake that way. But brine shrimp turns out to be a huge, important source of food for about 50% of farmed shrimp and other farmed aquaculture. So if you've eaten a farmed shrimp, which most shrimp you get is not wild caught, it's farmed. If that's the case, guess what? You've consumed, chances are, part of Great Salt Lake. Similarly, if you've had a nut grown in California, it was fertilized by sulfate of potash, which was produced right there on the shores of Great Salt Lake, and in the best quantities that we have available. If the Great Salt Lake goes away, the ability to harvest that sulfate of potash goes away as well. We have less agricultural production. In addition to that, lots of important minerals, because as a terminal lake, the water goes, it takes all the minerals down from the mountains, and it evaporates there in this pot. And so we have things like lithium, magnesium, and a bunch of other important stuff there. And so that's also stuff that we generally need for all sorts of different stuff. And people ask me all the time about the soda cans. The soda cans are actually hardened. The aluminum is a magnesium alloy with the aluminum, and magnesium, until a few years ago, the only place that it was produced in the Western Hemisphere was in Great Salt Lake. That would have been the source of that hardening. It also is important, as mentioned, for the greatest snow on Earth. That greatest snow on Earth, I'm sorry to say, most of that snow falls on the Wasatch before it gets here. Sorry. I wish it were the other way around, but it's still important. It's still important, and it's also a really important source of our drinking water. If we were to lose Great Salt Lake, we could lose upwards of 10% of our snowpack per year, right? And think about what that looks like for all of us that care about snow sports as well as drinking water. And then, last but not least, recreation and all the good stuff that it provides. Not only is it a beautiful place, it also it provides a stopover point for waterfowl as well as shorebirds. About 10 to 12 million birds per year pass through, and that's really important. So think about that. All of those things add up. Huge economic benefit for the state of Utah. And I wouldn't put a ton of stock in those numbers because we're redoing them right now, but just be aware that there is a big economic benefit. So how is the lake doing? Well, this is both a good news and a bad news story, because the trend line lately has not been awesome for us. And you can see that in the most recent years, you see that decline, and that decline, even with 2 good snow years, and then followed by a pretty good snow year, really hasn't been on the upward swing. So we've stabilized, but we're not necessarily going up to where it is, and that's important because where the lake is has consequences. There are different outcomes that we get with the lake at different levels. And if we get down into those really low levels that we started to see in 2022, 2023, and then even where we are today, we start to see adverse conditions. Those adverse conditions come in a number of forms, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But we really want to get back above 4195 and then ultimately above 4198. That's feet above sea level. That's not the depth of the lake. The lake is very shallow. When I make presentations, we're like, wow, it's a mighty big lake. It's like, no, it's only 25 feet deep, so let's be clear on this. Where we are as of about a week ago, we are sitting squarely in those adverse conditions. Not serious adverse conditions, so we are better than we were in 2022, but we're not sitting great. Let's talk about what those adverse conditions mean for you. Well, first of all, how we got there, water depletion's a big factor. Yes, we get higher temperatures, and that means we get less runoff generally. That runoff makes it into our streams, and then of those streams, we deplete more out for human uses, both M&I and agriculture. And that has its own set of consequences. One, as I mentioned, that playa has dried out, and as that playa dries out, we start to see it weather, and as it weathers, we get dust. State of Utah estimates that this is going to cost, to control that dust, just based on our Clean Air Act obligations, they say $1.5 billion. They are way low. This is for the state of Utah legislature. If you look at where the dust is, it's oftentimes right where people live as well, which creates a unique set of circumstances that people are concerned about. This is a picture I took of Owens Lake. It's a lake 1/16 the size of Great Salt Lake. The state of California is putting $100 million in per year on mitigating dust. $100 million a year. And that's on top of the $2.5 billion they've already put in on hardening that infrastructure so you don't get dust events. On a lake 1/16 the size of Great Salt Lake, that's a big deal for us because our cost could be much higher than that. In addition to that, we are concerned about bird species. This is the Wilson's phalarope, about 90% of remaining habitat for this bird, which migrates between, well, north of us here to Argentina. Weird species. I don't know why it travels so far. I guess it's got the wanderlust. I don't know. But it refuels here at Great Salt Lake. If we don't have brine shrimp, brine flies, that bird species is in trouble. It's not alone. There's a lot of these species, and we're concerned about what that looks like from an Endangered Species Act perspective, because that could also result in a reshuffling of water rights, which is concerning to all of us. Last, this is not Utah, this is not Great Salt Lake, this is Mono Lake in California. There's also, because of the way the lake plays out and the way the lake is following trends in other salient lake ecosystems, well, there's this pathway, sometimes it leads to a litigatory environment. In California, this led to the mother of all lawsuits involving public trust. We are now in our own public trust lawsuit, patterned similarly on that lawsuit. In the middle of discovery, the state will spend millions of dollars over the next few years in discovery alone before we even get into deciding what we do about it. So that's something. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to get more water to the lake. Good news is the state has already made progress in this. About 288,000 acre feet has been gone through a change application to dedicate to the wetlands around the lake or in the lake itself. That's great news, and this is a change from when I was a kid when no one really thought about Great Salt Lake as something that's important, but we have more to go, and that's where we want to talk about agricultural optimization, because the graph that you saw before, the largest user of water is agriculture. That shouldn't surprise anybody, because agriculture was here first. It's a first in time, first in right state, and we live in a semi-arid state. It takes a lot of water to grow things. That's important. It's an important part of our heritage, an important part of our culture. It's an important part of our economy. And all those things are really, really vital, but also the way we use that water is going to be key on how we do this. And we don't want it to be a lake versus agriculture. I mean, if I were a singing sword, I could say the lake and farmers can be friends. But I'm not going to do that. The good news is, with relatively small changes in agriculture, we can actually have big savings of water. And so different technologies, by just changing how we water, you can actually have big water savings. We already see the state investing large amounts of money in this, over $250 million to date in agricultural water optimization. The next step is, now that we have that conservation in place, what do we do with the water that's saved? And that's where we're working now to dedicate and deliver the water to the lake. So, and I just want to throw this slide in just so we're clear that it's not all of us have farms or ranches. It turns out that the rest of us are the problem as well. If we just watered our Kentucky bluegrass less, and I don't even mean take out your sod. I'm not even going to make that argument. If we watered your sod just what it needs to be watered versus what you think it needs to be watered, that's a 30% reduction in water use. Do you know how much water that is in the Great Salt Lake watershed? That's 100,000 acre feet of water saved per year. That almost gets us a lot of the ways to where we need to be, given the other conservation things we're doing. So that's something we'll be pushing on. So this is something where it's not urban versus rural or rural versus urban. This is something that we're all in this together. So We will now continue to work on getting that water to the lake. There's a lot of different things we can do on that. How much water do we need? Here's the rub. In order to get it back to that 4195 level, we probably need an additional 250,000 acre feet per year. That's a lot of water, friends. And that scares me so much. The good news is that I think that we're up to the task. There are very small things we can do, voluntary, right? So we don't have the heavy hand of government, voluntary, and that's where I think that things like the Summit Land Conservancy comes into real important play, because you're already doing that important, vital conservation work. And so it's really a pleasure for me to join you all here today and talk about things that we all care about. Here is my end message. Yes, we have a problem. It is not a fatal problem. We here in this room have the tools, we have the ability, and we have the incentives to do it right. And if we do it right, guess what? We avoid those terrible outcomes. We avoid regulatory rulings from courts. We avoid someone else telling us how to do this. The bad news is we actually do need to do this. And that means it's going to take all of us to act in a more aggressive fashion than we have acted to date. So my call to action to you all today is join us in this. The Great Salt Lake can be saved, it's worth saving, and it has a lot of benefit for all of us in this room. We also have a lot to lose if we don't get it right. And so I'm going to be around, happy to have any conversations or discussions with you all. If you want, I'm sitting right there. And so come find me as we go on here. And thank you so much for the invitation. You guys are awesome, and thanks so much for your willingness to engage in this really important cause. Thanks.
Everything is hot these days. Our planet and our politics. The problems we face are systemic, embedded, and overwhelming. It's easy to see rage all around us. It's easy to feel rage at another failed ceasefire, another failed compromise, another scar cut into the hillside. That rage can turn to despair. We seem helpless in the face of such anger, powerless to solve problems that are not of our making, and stunned into inaction by the magnitude of all that is wrong. Then, in the stillness before dawn, a bird sings. In this moment, when hope seems like delusion, we will determine our legacy. Summit Land Conservancy's role in this time of crisis is to save land. Land that helps cool the planet by drawing carbon out of the atmosphere. Land that filters water and holds it deep in aquifers that flow into springs and rivers, and eventually the Great Salt Lake. Land that feeds us. Land that shelters us. Land that calms the rage, lets us breathe deeply, lets our hearts beat with joy. The lands we save become refugia for wildlife as they find new habitats in a changing climate. The lands we save honor a long history of human stewardship in this watershed. The process of saving these places draws people together across fences and boundaries. As we work together to untangle red tape and negotiate solutions, we create friendships that douse the anger and warm our souls. Let's take the step between hope and action. Join us in saving this place, this watershed, this eternally beautiful set of mountains, valleys, rivers, and meadows. Let's be the people who stepped into this moment, recognizing that the challenges are many, but our love for this place and our commitment to our kids is even greater. Let's meet the crisis with courage, with generosity, with faith for the future.
Good morning. Thank you, Brian, for your leadership, your vision for a way to solve the challenges we face. Thank you to Deer Valley for hosting us today, and thank you, Colleen, for getting us started. Welcome, everyone. Since 2012, we've been gathering here in this room at these tables to pool our concern, to share a vision, and to take responsibility for the landscapes that give so much to us. When the Summit Land Conservancy saves land along the Wasatch Back, we're saving the headwaters of the Great Salt Lake. So 2 years ago, we committed to doing more, to saving more land and saving it faster. This is our campaign for the future. Since we gathered here a year ago, the Conservancy completed 2 conservation projects, saving over 4,390 acres. Most recently, in partnership with the Park City, we completed the preservation of Treasure Hill. The Conservancy now protects over 3,600 acres in and around Park City and over 19,000 acres in total. This map shows our current projects in red and completed easements in green. As of today, Summit Land Conservancy has $20 million in federal dollars obligated for 6,000 acres to save this year. And this funding has been reviewed and released by the Trump administration. So these projects are moving forward. I know that $20 million is a lot of money, but it's not enough to complete these transactions. This is the funding stack for a 99-acre parcel that we preserved last year, and you can see how the larger dollar amounts all hinge on gifts from individuals like you. In addition to easement purchases, we are also proceeding with projects to protect 3,500 acres that don't involve federal funding. We're partnering with other land trusts like Ogden Valley Land Trust, Bear River Land Conservancy, and other groups to save land in northern Utah by providing support and expertise. We're not a statewide land trust, but we have a statewide impact. Now, 2 years into our 5-year campaign, we're on track with individual giving and landowner donations. We're ahead of our goal in federal dollars obligated, but we have a long way to go in funding bequests. We're hoping that more people will come forward and let us know that they have planned gifts from their estate. We thought that the long-lived bristlecone pine trees are a fitting emblem for a donation that is truly enduring and evergreen. Last year, we received a generous distribution from the estate of Glenn McConkey. Yes, as in McConkey Bowl and the legendary Shane McConkey. Glenn's bequest is a permanent legacy that will be renewed each spring as the Sandhill cranes return to Marchant Meadows, and each fall as the elk come down to winter in Round Valley, where Glenn loved to walk her dogs. So here we are in 2025, 2 years into a 5-year campaign, goals established and promises made. And suddenly, the playbook is all new. Change always challenges us. It can hurt. Things can be lost, and it can reveal great suffering. But even as we acknowledge that others may be struggling now, our work to address the looming threat to our ability to live here in northern Utah is as essential as ever. Rather than be surprised by change, Summit Land Conservancy has built an organization that expects it. We've learned that we survive with the help of our friends. The best relationships are based on trust that has been proven time and time again. Trust is the essential glue in a civil society. We have to trust people, even strangers. And we do so all the time. We trust people to stay in their lane on the road, to stop at a red light, to use a blinker. Well, maybe not that. But the point is that human society is based on trust. It is the covenant we make to each other every day and it's the landmark of integrity. Trust is proven by actions, not just intentions. So Summit Land Conservancy pursues accreditation and certifications and invests in our people so that we have the systems and the institutional knowledge to be worthy of the trust placed in us. These actions demonstrate our commitment and allow us to be effective in fulfilling our promises to all of our partners. Saving land is complicated, expensive, and unusual. It takes strength to stay the course, to weather the setbacks, the loss of funding, and the public scrutiny. Summit Land Conservancy is honored to support the families who work with us to protect their heritage. 9 of these families have come back to us after saving one piece of land to do more conservation, including the Osgathorpe family of Park City. This family has never sold land for development, and they are here today. Denny and David Wright completed their second easement with us in 2024. In total, the Wrights have preserved over 5,126 acres, and they're also here this morning. These families put their trust in us again and again. Their faith fuels our efforts. Over the last 14 years, Summit Land Conservancy has completed 15 transactions with federal funding partners, accessing $32.6 million. No one else in the state is working at this level. In recognition of our expertise, the federal government granted Summit Land Conservancy certified entity status in 2023. We're one of only about 35 land trusts in the country, now trusted by the federal government to do our own due diligence. The cost of the Certified Entity Program is borne by the land trust, saving taxpayer money. This is efficient for the federal government, but it means that Summit Land Conservancy has to raise the money to make sure that appraisals are accurate, that title reports align with surveys, and that other assessments are true and valid. It's in the land trust's best interest to make sure these reviews are rock solid because we are the ones who will have to defend the easement forever. We rely on donations from people like you who share our commitment to saving these lands to cover the costs of this work. When I'm out talking to landowners or elected officials in other parts of the Wasatch Back, I'm often told that people don't want to be Park City. No one is willing to tell me what they mean by that, and I appreciate that they're probably being polite, or they just don't want to go out in public dressed as a jackalope. Of course, we don't all have to have the same habits. In Park City, people think I'm joking when I say that we have friends in the Utah legislature. In 2025, the legislature voted to place 20% of unused Greenbelt rollback taxes into the state's Lee Ray McAllister Fund. This is the pot of money that was designated back in 2000 to fund conservation easements in Utah. Initially, the state proposed putting $2 to $5 million a year in the fund, but that dwindled to $1 million and sometimes not even that. This year, however, thanks to the passage of House Bill 237, sponsored by Representative Casey Snyder, up to $10 million a year could make its way into the Lee Ray Fund. This is a game changer for conservation in Utah, and it's thanks to the Utah State Legislature. No other group of people, under whatever type of government, has managed to save a terminal saline lake. We're going to have to do something different, something unprecedented. We're going to have to work together to respect different viewpoints and trust people that we don't always agree with. Summit Land Conservancy does this every day. Our success in saving land is proof that people can actually put aside differences and solve problems. We bring people to the table for a common cause, and today is an example. Look around you here. We have people from all across the Wasatch Back, from Morgan to Midway. Some are new to town, some whose families arrived in Utah with Brigham Young. You might be sitting next to someone who votes very differently from you. Smile and say, good morning. In 2022, Summit Land Conservancy and Ogden Valley Land Trust together helped save over 1,000 acres of the former monastery farm near Huntsville. The landowner's name is Bill White. And we have a great relationship with the Bill White of Park City, who owns restaurants and donates these fabulous teepee dinners to our Blue Sky Bash Gala. But today, I'm talking about the man we call Monastery Bill White. Monastery Bill White did his first easement with us on 85 acres of land along the Weber River near Hennifer. It was so easy that when he learned that the Catholic Church was preparing to sell the historic Huntsville Monastery to developers, he decided to buy it and place it in another conservation easement. This project was a little more expensive than the Hennifer deal, and it wasn't what anyone would call easy. But we did it, and today the McFarland family leases the historic Abbey Farm, where they grow onions, wheat, and pumpkins. Bill and the farmer realized that they were using a lot of their water on some pretty marginal soils, and they've now decided that they could restore that land to native grasses and lease the excess water back to the Great Salt Lake. Bill will be one of the first landowners to do this. If Summit Land Conservancy had not already had the relationship with Monastery Bill White, if we had not had the expertise to navigate the federal funding process and bring in the necessary dollars, if we had not been able to partner with the Ogden Valley Land Trust to generate local support, that land would today be a subdivision with roads and a little strip mall, and the water would not be available to go back to the lake. It's hard to trust people we don't respect. In these divisive times, our news and cute social media posts are all about how stupid other people are, how elected officials are venal, and people who hold different opinions are idiots. This talk erodes respect, makes it harder to accept a compromise, or acknowledge a good idea if it comes from someone on the other side of the fence. I once heard a wise woman say that obligations are blessings. I had to think about that for a while to understand that obligations give us the opportunity to prove who we are, to demonstrate our character. A few years ago, I visited the beaches of Normandy. I was struck by the monuments there that noted how American soldiers fought not for land or territory, but for democracy, which was under threat from what they called barbarism. Today, we have an obligation to step into a moment of crisis. How lucky are we that our challenge does not involve sending our children to face machine guns on a faraway beach called Utah. Our challenge is just to work together with our fellow Utahns. The Summit Land Conservancy's efforts to save land is part of this essential work. The heroes of this effort will be many. They'll be the courageous ones who try the new idea, the wise ones who will craft compromise, and all of us who accept responsibility for being part of the solution. In 2008, when the Great Recession hit, Summit Land Conservancy had agreements to save about 225 acres. In 2020, when COVID shut down our local economy, we had projects that would save just over 1,000 acres. All of those lands were saved, despite the turmoil and uncertainty of those times. Today, we have signed agreements with landowners to protect over 25,000 acres, and this is what is at stake. These projects are rangelands in Morgan, Weber, and Summit counties. This map shows our progress in the Colville area. The saved land is in dark green, and current projects are in lighter green. And also meadows that border the rivers of the Wasatch Back and create our rural landscapes. In the Camas Valley, the completed projects here are in dark green, and the red are our current projects. Summit Land Conservancy is not a machine, not a government program, nor a political movement. We're a land trust. We are your neighbors. We are people like you who love this place. We know that good folks can get past the discord and beyond divisive headlines. looking under rocks, sharing a meal and some world-class bacon. Seeing people face to face, this is how we will find common ground. And this is how we will save our future. Trust is not a monument carved in marble. It's an ongoing activity. It has to be earned over and over again. This is why Summit Land Conservancy takes the time to earn Platinum Seal, Certified Entity Status, and National Accreditation. Because we understand that landowners trust us with their heritage, people who make estate gifts and join our Bristlecone Society trust us with their legacy, and donors like you trust us with your hope. We take this responsibility seriously. Just as you trust in us, we also trust in you. It's your support that gives us the resilience to step up to the challenge of our time. We trust in you to save these mountains, these meadows, this watershed, and all who depend upon it for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, Brian, for helping us understand the challenges that we have in front of us, but also the incredible opportunity that we can all be as part of the solution. If you look on your table, you see this beautiful program, and it tells you on the back who the staff is, but importantly, inside is a donation pledge card. And you can fill out, if you brought your checkbook, if you have your credit card, you can make a multi-year gift, you can talk about an estate gift, but however it works best for you. If you came here today because you love land, you're not alone. Look around. Look around at all the people that also want to be part of the solution. Whatever it is that you had planned to give today, we'd like you to double it. It's that urgent. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our landowners. Thank you to our community leaders, our representatives, friends and family that I see out there. We really appreciate it. Special thank you to Brian Steed. What an incredible program. Let's all be part of the solution. Thank you.